All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Manel Mefteh, who said she would pronounce, who I invited to correctly pronounce her name if I missed a syllable or missed a vowel in there, who's going to be presenting this morning on animals on the brain, humor through metaphors and smiles in Tunisian sitcoms, Nsibti Laaziza as a case study. I'll give you a 5-minute warning when we're nearing that time. Go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Manel Mefteh. I'll be presenting this research about animals on the brain, humor through metaphors and similes in Tunisian sitcoms, Nsibti Laaziza as a case study, which can be translated as My Dear Mother-in-Law. So starting with the introduction, sorry, my slides are not moving. So here is the outline of this presentation, starting with the introduction, literature review, methodology, results and discussion, and finally, I'll end up with concluding remarks. So starting with human cognition functions in different ways. Actually, metaphorical language allows people to experience and understand one entity in terms of another. And here, features of particular source domain are conceptually mapped into target domain, allowing target categories to be apprehended in novel and revealing ways. Some of the ways that human cognition, let's say, work is by mapping human behavior and features onto non-human, let's say, entities. So here we are talking about a class of metaphors involving the use of animals to refer to people. These metaphors are actually based on a hierarchical structure, the great chain of being, in which humans are located above and animals below. Okay, various animal metaphors may have different meanings, and the same metaphor can have radically different implications in different contexts of use. They can be endearing, as in the use of pet names for children or lovers. They can be hostile when used as slurs and insults, and they may refer to individuals or groups. And they can function they can stand also for specific human traits. For example, when people use mouse to, let's say, to imply the timidity trait. Although animal metaphors and similes are widespread, little is known about what accounts for their humorous effects in media, specifically in Tunisian sitcoms. So the objectives of this study are as follows. First, to identify the types of animals used in metaphors and similes, to uncover the meanings conveyed by these animal metaphors and or similes and the factors moderating them. And finally, to understand what makes these, let's say, animal metaphors or similes humorous. Moving now to the literature review part, starting with the first theory, conceptual metaphor theory. The essence of this theory is that people try to understand one domain of experience in terms of another. And simile is a figure of speech which directly compares two things though not normally perceived as being alike, stating them to be alike for some rhetorical purpose. The simile actually uses words such as like, as, so, then, and shares some properties with metaphor. However, a metaphor is an untrue statement uttered for the sake of its effect on the hearer or reader, and this is, of course, according to Davidson, 1978. So they both actually, these mechanisms share similarities, but they are said to be different. Actually, here, the relationship between similes and metaphors is controversial among scholars. Some of the main points of the arguments about the relation between simile and a metaphor can be summarized in the following. First, similes and metaphors are different, and second, similes and metaphors share some properties, though they are different figures of speech. A simile is more explicit and a metaphor is more implicit. A final view says that the clear-cut distinction between simile and metaphor is untenable, and thus the two figures of speech must be viewed as different degrees of similarity on the continuum of metaphoricity. That is to say, metaphoricity here is gradable. It depends on the hearer or the addressee. Okay, moving now to talk a little bit about humor theories. These are the most three influential humor theories. Okay, so starting with the superiority theory, the essence of this theory is that we laugh about the misfortunes of others, which reflects our own superiority. Moving to the release theory, the essence or the gist of the matter about this theory is that we laugh when something relieves psychological tension by allowing us to face our fears. Let's say we release nervous energy and overcome inhibition. And finally, let's end up with incongruity theory. Actually, here humor emerges from the sudden perception of incongruity or the dissociation of two contrasting frames of reference. Moving now to the study of humor, relating, if we want, humor to cognitive linguistics, Dynal 2011 studied humorous blends, and she contends that they depend on playful resolution conducted in a pleasant cognitive context. Humorous incongruity may be captured in terms of a distance between concepts and domains to which they belong, and humorous blends may recruit mental spaces which are playfully inappropriate or even tabooed. Let's say the violation of politeness norms, or let's say other things. Moving now to humorous metaphors, actually, Attardo 2015, page 106, classifies humorous metaphors into funny metaphors, metaphors with funny referent, and metaphors, mixed metaphors, overdone metaphors, and erroneously categorized metaphors. Okay, about moving now to the methodology part. As far as the corpus is concerned, Nsibti Laaziza, as you can see, which can be translated as My Dear Mother-in-Law, is a Tunisian sitcom with 143 episodes of approximately 30 minutes each. It was broadcast in 2010, 2011, and from 2013 to 2018 on Nisma TV. The sitcom was also aired in Moroccan and Algerian channels also. As far as the synopsis, so Suna, this is the name of the character in the sitcom, is a real estate agent living peacefully with his wife, Hayat, receives an unexpected visit from his mother-in-law, Fatma, who is actually called Muna Nuruddin in real life. Accompanied by her son, Munji, she decides to extend her stay at her daughter's house, making Suna's life unbearable. To regain his peaceful life and with the complicity of his friend Babusha, whose real name is Jabala, so this is the nickname of Jabala, which is Babusha, which is actually which means a snail, okay, in our language. So he uses every possible means to make them return to their hometown. As for the selection criteria of this data, so the sitcom genre is phenomenally successful at attracting broad audiences to television networks. And there is no, let's say, there is apprehension about studying the mechanics underneath sitcom humor. And the reason why maybe people find things funny illuminates psychological and sociological aspects of individuals and groups. This is, of course, according to Mills 2005. Moving now to the identification of animal metaphors and or similes, I started actually with words or phrases that compare characters to animals directly, that is to say similes, or indirectly. Here we mean metaphors. So the linguistic identification actually was based on extracting explicit Arabic comparison markers such as كأنك, ki, قولش عليك, so as if he were, or as if you were, or you are like something, or you see, so these are the Arabic comparison markers. And then later on, I tried to translate them. And second, I tried to look at metaphors here. I tried to identify the direct comparison without, let's say, explicit markers. Some examples included that bear made her nervous. Okay, so here we, even in the Arabic, let's say, example, we don't have a comparison marker. You're still here, Mr. Cat, go away. And here someone is talking to another man, calling him Mr. Cat. The third example here, he sleeps for a bit and then gets up barking. Here, of course, the speaker is referring to someone who is, let's say, sick or ill. So here, it's a metaphor normally barking is used with dogs, not with people. So moving now to the results and discussions, the animal metaphors and similes draw on these three categories. First, we find the domestic animals. We find cats, dogs, rabbits, camels, donkeys, roosters, and goats. Moving to another class of animals, wild animals are present within these similes and metaphors. We find, for example, a lion, a bear, a monitor lizard, a viper, wolf. And insects are also there. Metaphors and similes draw also on insects. For example, we find a bee, a fly, beetle, etc. So some of the metaphors or the similes try to communicate or try to imply the meaning that someone is fat, for example, relating to the appearance. As we notice here, this example, that bear made her nervous. So the mother was calling or was, let's say, saying to her daughter that, let's say, her husband, she compares the husband or she implies that the husband is a bear. The metaphor implies the physical trait of the person being described, and the person being described is somehow fat. So here she was, let's say, stressing or focusing on his size, calling him bear, which is a stereotypical image, calling someone a bear because of their size or of their, let's say, this physical trait. The second example, she is like a piece of red mullet soaked in flour. Well, this is actually, it draws on the Tunisian culture, the way of cooking, let's say, red mullets. So the simile draws on a visual image that is easy for viewers to imagine. A thick, cakey foundation compared to a fish coated in flour. It creates a picture that is odd and humorous, especially that it is used to describe a woman's face, which is typically associated with beauty and refinement. Moving now to the behavior, many of the similes and metaphors actually try to communicate that people's behavior relates a lot to animals' behavior. So one of the examples also included, we are lions, and here implying that men in the sitcom are, let's say, brave and powerful. So power here is, as the metaphor connotes, assigned to a wild animal. Again, we have another example. He sleeps and then wakes up barking. So here there is a kind of incongruity that comes from comparing a human to a dog barking when he wakes up. Instead of saying the person complains, yells, or talks loudly after waking up, the metaphor unexpectedly suggests that he barks like a dog. So another example includes, you are a bee without honey. The speaker removes the key quality of the bee, that is to say, making honey, meaning she lacks the expected sweetness, warmth, or kindness. Another example, why are you puffing up at us like a monitor lizard? Are you feeling out of breath? So the speaker here describes someone angry and breathing heavily, but the simile blows their reaction out of proportion by likening them to a large intimidating lizard that puffs up when threatened. So actually the second part here, are you feeling out of breath, adds irony, suggesting that the person is overreacting or taking things too seriously, making the scene even funnier. Okay, so the sitcom genre plays a crucial role in generating humor among viewers, as they have prior expectations that there is something funny about the content. This mental readiness or expectation probably makes them more receptive to humor, let's say, makes the viewers more receptive to humor. So the fictional context allows for exaggeration, freedom to break social norms, hence crafting humor in ways that would not be possible in a strictly realistic setting. Humor also depends on the broader social and cultural context in which these metaphors and similes are used. Humor stems from the details, making the dialogue more colorful and playful. Specifically, the wording of the animal metaphors and similes tends to create unexpected, incongruous images. And here, back to the example of you are a bee without honey, it presents a familiar image, let's say a bee, but removes its defining feature, that is to say honey, making it sound incomplete or useless in a way that mocks a character's behavior. And by the way, this example here relates to let's say, a female character who is supposed to act, let's say, in a very, let's say, normal way, but she was harsh on the guy. So he called her, "You are a bee, but without honey."
5
Moving
minutes.
to the concluding remarks, overall, the analysis of animal metaphors and/or similes in the chosen data highlights the important role that animals play in shaping human language and perception in Tunisian sitcoms. These cognitive mechanisms not only provide a colorful and creative way of expressing human characteristics, but also reflect cultural attitudes towards certain traits and animals in a humorous way. The study has attempted to provide insight into how the human mind constructs and classifies an animal with positive and negative connotations in scripted media for the purpose of generating humor. And maybe a more extensive study might be conducted to corroborate these findings by examining their frequency and context in representative corpora across cultures. Thank you for your attention, and these are the references I used in my study.
Thank you, Manel. We have about 15 minutes for 14 minutes for questions and discussion. Again, you can raise your hand. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Hello. Did you notice that the animal metaphors and similes were used more by certain characters than other characters? And if you did, what does that say about the character who uses them?
Yes, thank you so much. Your question is so interesting, and actually, I've noticed that the characters that were supposed to, let's say, to act as coming from the rural area, from, let's say, the countryside, used more these, let's say, type of similes and metaphors. However, people who are, let's say, dwelling on cities, on, let's say, I don't know how to say it, but people who are just dwellers of the capital, Tunis, were not using them frequently, okay? So the extensive use of metaphors and similes, let's say, was really, let's say, related to these characters. I don't know, maybe, I mean, the scriptwriter tended to, let's say, give them these metaphors and similes because maybe people from the rural side or from the countryside use these metaphors extensively. I have no idea about that, but it is remarkable. Not all the characters use these metaphors and similes in the same way.
Thank you.
Question for the audience.
A
May I
question for
ask
who?
for the audience?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, when translating the examples from Arabic to English, I was afraid that, let's say, they won't be humorous anymore. You see what I mean? Because, I don't know, maybe translation undermines the sense of humor in these examples. And the examples in Arabic are funny, are so humorous, but translating them into English here made me skeptical about, let's say, they may be considered as not humorous for the audience. This cross-cultural dimension of, let's say, of these, of perceiving these animal metaphors and similes.
Can I say something about this thing?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, Manal, this is right. Actually, cultural context does come up in the translation as well, and that is more in the translation studies, and you can go with that thing as well, that are they translated, one of your papers can be, are they aptly translated or not? Because there are certain things, as you have pointed out about the dog's bark, and there was example, the mother-in-law says, "Mr. Cat," but then he wakes up and barks. So there is another context to it, that about what about the cat? And then the person himself wakes up and barks like a dog. So yes, these are certain things that are similar across the culture, but there are certain animals that may not be, like in I think in South Asia. I don't know whether it is true for Saudi, the Arab cultures as well, that owl is considered as a silly animal, but in West, owl is considered as pasted as on the emblems of the universities and institutions with high wisdom. So yes, you need to be careful about that. But your examples were perfectly fine. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead. Hi.
Hi. Thank you, Manel. That was very interesting. Now, when it comes to translating humor, the most important thing is to keep the humor effect. In other words, you don't have to translate it literally. As long as it is funny, this is what you have to take into consideration. The most important thing is the humor effect. And you can follow the different resources of the knowledge resources of the general theory of verbal humor to see the technical side of translating humor. And then you think of how to keep the humor effect. So, because, translating humor is different from translating any other type of genre.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Manel.
Yeah. Thank you.
Haume, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Those translated similes and metaphors for me from a Chinese culture are still very funny. But I have a question for you. That is, based on your simile and metaphors, there are a lot of dog simile and metaphors, right? Are those metaphors related to positive connotations or negative connotations? Because in our culture, dogs are always related to those negative images. So that's my interest.
Actually, most of the examples, let's say, have negative connotations, except for lions, okay, which implies, let's say, someone who's powerful and brave. But actually, all the examples imply, or let's say, have negative connotations.
Thank you. That's very different from American, implication for those dog similes and metaphors.
Yes, maybe.